Audio testing, 1, 2, 3. Lights on, camera rolling, and action.
Welcome to the Scaling Creator Podcast, the one-stop shop that explores problems, solutions, and stories for business-minded creators. I'm Soren Dickens.
And I'm Eriksen Dickens.
We'll be talking about everything from self-discovery, storytelling, leadership, marketing, sales, operations, and finance.
If you like a healthy dose of education mixed with a generous dash of insightful entertainment, prepare for your ears to be pleasured.
Oh, yeah. Make sure to check us out at scalingcreator.com and also join our free Discord community.
Scaling Creator launching in 3, 2, 1.
The following content is not intended for all listeners, but we strongly encourage all listeners to listen regardless. All right, welcome back to the Scaling Creator Podcast. I'm Soren Dickens. I'm here with Eriksen Dickens and Trent Merzon, legendary high school football coach, teacher, father, and so much more. We're really excited to have this episode. He's been an iconic figure in our town, and we're looking forward to diving into his story and how he made an impact on hundreds and probably thousands of people's lives throughout the course of his career. So, Eriksen, I'm going to send it over to you, and we'll get started.
Yeah, super excited to have you on, Coach. Thank you for being here. Yeah, it's so cool because here we are now. I'm 28, Soren's 26, and I remember as a kid, little kid, it's like growing up in Oakdale, going to the football games Friday night, you know, hearing people talking about Oakdale High football, going as a kid and thinking like, oh my gosh, this is like NFL stuff, right? And you always hear the name like Coach Merzon. You see it in the paper. And now here we are all these years later, like sitting here doing this. And now after his career has come to a close, looking back on it all, you know, I'm excited to just kind of dive in a little bit more about your experiences coaching, your experiences growing up in Oakdale, kind of the ins and outs of your legacy in a sense. So yeah, I'm ready to get it going if you are. Yeah,
absolutely.
Dive in.
Yep.
Okay. So being a lifelong Oakdale guy, you know, we're lifelong Oakdale guys too, fourth generation. We're curious to hear about your upbringing in Oakdale. You know, as a kid, what was your childhood like? Talk a little bit about your upbringing and how, you know, Oakdale shaped you growing up.
Yeah, you know, I moved here. My mom moved here when I was 7 years old. Brother was 9, and I was a Cloverland Cougar. You know, I grew up over there. And
oldest school here, right? In elementary school?
You know, I'm not sure which one's older, Fair Oaks or Cloverland. You know, back then there was two. There was a little rivalry, and we lived over on Pedersen Road, and I just kind of grew up in Oakdale. It's funny, you already mentioned, you know, your guys is growing up and watching Oakdale football, you know, and that's what I did. Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up and I watched Oakdale football. And, you know, it's generational, like you said. You know, I Valley Home. You know, I had family in Valley Home watching the Valley Home baseball crew. That's where I first met your dad and thought he was the greatest thing ever. And my cousin played with him. And that's what Oakdale is. It's just generations that find themselves doing the same things again and again and again. And not because they are stuck. I think because it's just a beautiful thing, you know. And that's why I grew up in Oakdale, just kind of loving the town. My mom worked at Teeter's Wardrobe right next to Moss Rose. I would walk down there after junior high at Magnolia, hang out with Marianne at Moss Rose Bakery. It was just a great childhood, riding your bikes around town, leaving your bikes outside the stores. Mm-hmm. It was just a tremendous, tremendous place to grow up as a kid. Things have changed. It's grown, obviously. But I think the roots are still there. They're buried deep here. Yeah, growing up in Oakdale just allowed me some just tremendous opportunities. You know, everybody knew everybody, good and bad. Yeah. Everybody kind of held each other in check. The other parents held all the kids in check. Everybody either knew somebody or knew somebody who knew somebody. And when you rode your bike around town, you knew that if you did something wrong, somebody was going to say something to you and it was going to get back. And, you know, everybody was everybody's brother's keeper, you know, and it was just kind of a beautiful time to grow up in a small town.
Yeah, that's special and unique in today's world. I remember you mentioned that in the OKG documentary we did years back, something that really stuck with me. You said people in this town will defend people in this town, even if they don't really like them. You know what I mean? And that is something really cool. So that's something that we definitely picked up on too growing up.
Yeah, and I think it's unique. Mm-hmm. I don't think every town is like that. And yeah, we can be critical of each other here. We really can. Sure. But if you want to see what this community is really made of, you know, have a cause. Mm-hmm. And then just get out of the way and watch how many people come that you didn't think knew you or you didn't think liked you, or, you know, just have a cause. And we've had a number of causes here throughout, you know, and it's amazing some of the stuff that this community can pull together.
Yeah, absolutely. What were your, like, growing up, sports? Was that your main thing? What were your kind of goals? What was the trajectory you were on as a kid growing up in this town?
Yeah, you know, as a young guy, I just loved to play. You know, that's kind of what I had. My family was all Cowboys in Oakdale, and I'm half Armenian and half Oakdale, I guess. I don't know, mix. And
I love that.
Yeah. How did
you know,
those mix?
It's an interesting mix. It really is. You know, I'd go stay with my dad and my grandparents in L.A., and we had a lot of family in Fresno, and you know, we tried not to perspire, you know, after 4:30 because it was supper time, and you know, here, I mean, we didn't eat dinner till 8, and it was just a whole different. It was a different world. It was interesting, you know, and looking back on things, I just kind of chuckle like it was a blessing that I got to see two completely different lifestyles. And I got to kind of get in where I fit in, you know, and it was so different here. Yeah, I just super fortunate to get both perspectives. Which one I enjoy better? You know, I'm probably stuck in the middle somewhere now, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So your dad lives in Los Angeles?
But he passed away a long time ago, but he grew up in, my grandparents and my dad grew up in L.A., right next to UCLA. So I'd spend my summers and Christmas vacations down there. I mean, I loved going down there.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that's what I wanted to do. My favorite school was UCLA. And I just played sports. I love sports. I was never great in school. School to me was just jump through the hoops enough to keep eligible and keep playing, you know. And then my family here, they were all Cowboys. So we'd go to the ropings on Sunday. My granddad had an arena. We worked the chutes. Cool. We had the 10-steer dummy ropings as kids. When it came time for me to get on the horse and do the real thing, the Lord put a baseball glove in my hand. And I started playing baseball. And now I just got to chuckle like, you know, that whole cowboy thing never did really take off past those 10 steers in Riverbank, you know, at Jacob Meyer Park. And we're playing baseball, and I just loved competing and loved playing. And
so baseball was your first like sports passion, would you say?
you know, I think it is growing up in Oakdale. I think everybody, to everybody it is. I think, right? Everybody plays OBA baseball, you know, and my family did it, and we did it, and we were pretty good at it. My first team, Chuck DeVal. You may probably remember Craig DeVal, and he coached the Yankees. I was on my brother's team. I was the youngest one on the team. We won an OBA championship. You know, I still have that T-shirt. No, I'm joking. We don't have the T-shirt, but
hanging up.
It was the only OBA championship I ever won. The first year I ever played. We never won again. But my best friend now is Craig DeVal. He's my brother's age, and he lives in Houston, Texas, and we still laugh about those Yankee days.
Wow.
You know, I mean, we were young. I mean, my mom was 26 years old, had just moved to Oakdale, divorced, single with 2 boys, and an era when that didn't happen very often.
Sure.
And you know, the DeVals kind of took us under their wing, and we learned how to play the game.
Right. Let me ask you about that, because, you know, like you said, part of you comes from a different culture, being Armenian. When you moved to Oakdale, you know, Oakdale, probably not a lot of Armenians around here, right? You don't see many.
Still don't.
You don't.
Hard to find grape leaves here.
Right. So when you moved here, especially back in I think you said it was like the 70s, correct?
Yes, sir.
How was that transition in terms of being welcomed here?
We didn't know any different. I don't think anybody really, when you grow up, you don't really ever stop to think about what you have and what you don't have. You know, what you have, you think it's normal. I mean, and I had a great childhood. You know, I loved growing up here, and my mom did a great job of raising my brother and I, and you know, then she remarried when I was 9 to, you know, Chuck Pennington, just the greatest man I've ever met. You know, he's the best man at my wedding, and I just had a lot of great opportunities here, and I just grew up like you guys grew up, looking at these role models that were just high school athletes, that were just older.
100%.
You know, and now you look back and you're like, was my role model really just a high school athlete? You know, I remember watching high school football games, thinking they're larger than life, like legends. You know, and you stand there and you watch them warm up, and then you get a little bit older and realize, you know, not only was that kid probably not a legend, he probably wasn't even a good kid, and he was an average player at best, and he probably drank too much and smoked too much, and how in the hell did I look up to that? You know, and it's like, it's interesting, you know, and
one name that comes to mind when you say that, when I used to go to the games as a kid, Nick Battiati.
Oh, Nicky, one of the greatest athletes I've ever coached.
Oh my gosh, Nicky Battiati.
Yeah.
I remember watching him. That guy
era.
That era. I mean, that team was stacked. I think it was maybe 7 or 8, maybe a little older, but man.
Yeah, you know, everybody's defined by their age, right? When you talk about Oakdale football players that you first remember, you know, and you know exactly how old somebody is. You know, for me, it was Derek Reimer, it was Mark Malone, it was you know, Brett Martin, it was Tim Wilson at quarterback, it was Jamie Looper now, who's just lives right down the street here, and just a great human being, you know, number 10, and reason I wanted to wear number 10. It's just so funny. You start talking to these people that grew up in town, and they start dropping these names, and then you get to know them later as adults, and defines who you were and what era you grew up in, really.
Yeah, 100%. Tell us a little bit about like your high school experience. I want to know a little bit about what Oakdale High was like back in the day. You know, I think you were a 3-sport athlete, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your high school days. Who was the high school Trent Merzon?
I read that question, prepping me for this one, and my wife and my kids got a little nervous when they saw that one. They're like, "How are you going to answer that one?" I said, "Don't worry, I'll figure it out." You know, like when you grow up and you work as long as I have in that same town that you grew up in, it's funny because sometimes people don't want to let go of who you were and accept who you are, who you're going to be.
Sure.
It can create its own obstacles, and you'll hear people say things like, I don't want to coach or work in the same town I grew up in, or for those reasons. I mean, it's a process, right? Like the high school Trent Merzon was so different than who I am today, and I look back and just kind of chuckle. It was a different era, obviously. Loved athletics. I loved my coaches. Playing sports meant everything to me, and it was really what I had. We didn't have much money. I wasn't very good in the classroom, but when we got a chance to compete athletically, and you guys could probably relate to this, both being great athletes, it was my opportunity to kick ass.
Yeah.
And, when you compete athletically, whether you're in a dugout or you're in a locker room, nobody cares how much money you have. Nobody cares what your background is. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. None of it matters.
Sports is like an equalizer.
It's the ultimate equalizer. Nobody cares how tall you are. Nobody cares. It was my opportunity just to compete, and that's how I learned how to compete. It was great, and I love my high school experience. I had great friends in high school. We never missed school, and that's weird because we weren't. A lot of my friends weren't great in school. We weren't bad, but we weren't. We weren't what you would call college students. Sure. But I loved my teachers. We had fun in class. We had fun going to lunch. We had fun hanging out in the parking lot. In fact, we'd go out on the weekends. Our meeting spot before we went out was our Oakdale High School parking lot.
I love that, yeah.
And you would drive by the parking lot, on a Friday night, and you'd see 15, 20 cars there.
Yeah.
And then it was almost every weekend we'd have to go back to the high school parking lot to get our cars, and we'd end up hanging out there.
That's cool.
And then the cops would end up coming by, and we knew them by name. They knew us by name. They would say, it's time to go home, but there was no gates on that parking lot. Parking lot would flood in the winter, and sometimes people would do some silly stuff. It was just great, and thankfully, and I know you guys understand this, even though we're doing a podcast. 1984 and 1983, nobody knew what a podcast was, but they also didn't know what social media was.
Right.
So all of these memories, they're between my ears. They're not on everybody else's phones, including my kids and my wife's. And we got to go out and have a lot of fun. It was for us.
Yeah.
It seems the world just seems so different today.
It's like people today, like they'll do things, they'll go out, and it almost seems like they care more about the picture of that as opposed to actually enjoying it in the moment. And
yeah, I guess the biggest comparison of my era, and probably your guys' too, was going to that concert that you couldn't stand, but you sure bought a T-shirt because you wanted everybody to know you were at that concert. But you're at that concert and the music was too loud, made your head hurt a little bit, and there's too many people, and then you just probably wanted to go home, but you got that damn T-shirt and you couldn't wait to wear it. I feel like every single day our kids get up right now, it's all about that T-shirt. It's all about that post. It's all about that picture. And I think it really has a demoralizing impact on our community and our society, to be honest with you. It's such a polarized world we live in. But my high school experience was just tremendous, man. I loved my teachers. I loved walking around on that campus. I loved competing, wearing the red and yellow. But the funnest time, we would go to lunch. We'd race to lunch every day.
Burn out in the parking lot.
Well, yeah, my buddy and I got in trouble one time because we called it road racing. I probably shouldn't say this. Well,
say it.
Whatever.
We
would race to lunch, and it was like we had teammates. So we'd all know that week who our partner was in our car. And I had this blue Ford Courier that was handed down twice from my stepdad to my brother to me, and the doors barely shut and the windows wouldn't roll down, but we all had a partner. And my other buddy who actually just stepped down from the our superintendent role here, I won't mention any names, but he had this yellow truck. And then a couple of my friends had nice cars, but the socioeconomic impact had not hit Oakdale yet.
Okay.
I think every group maybe had one friend that had a little bit of money, but none of us had money. So all of our vehicles, it didn't look like our parking lot does today.
Yeah.
But we would race to lunch, and we'd say, okay, where are we going? We would always say there was a Hildegard's Deli down there by the cow track now. And so we'd race. It was the first one there, and he had bragging rights for the day, and then we'd finish lunch all at the same time, and you couldn't leave the restaurant to go back to school until everybody had eye contact, and then it was on. Once you hit that door, it's on. You and your team partner, it was like road rally. It was so much fun, and then we came to that, before they redid that new baseball field, it was just a street behind our stadium. We didn't realize that one of our administrators, Mr. Casey, haven't heard from him in a long time, hope he's doing well. He was hanging out in front of our gym. We didn't see him. And I thought that since I had the lead going on that backstretch behind the visitor bleachers, I thought the race was over. Well, Mr. Klein in the yellow truck didn't think the race was over. He tried to pass me coming into the parking lot. And he hit our speed bumps, and I think the little yellow love had air. And we get out of the car, and we didn't see our administrator there, and he was just looking at us in awe, like, what in the world, and we're arguing over who won. We needed some kind of official, and he's like, I won. I said, the race was over. You can't race into the parking lot. I thought we had these rules. But the rules were always flexible in the road rally scheme of how you're doing things. And mind you, there was less people on the road. There was less cars on the road. There was less stoplights in town. Yeah. I would love to tell you it was really safe. It wasn't, but it was safer than trying to do it in today's Oakdale. And then we look up, and he just gives us the finger, like, come here. So we walk up there, and he gives us, what in the world are you guys doing? My friend says, you saw the whole thing? And Mr. Casey says, yeah, I was standing here and watched the whole thing. And he goes, so you saw us come down that backstretch? And Mr. Casey said, yeah, I was standing here, and I heard the engines revving, and I saw you guys racing. And it's dangerous. And so my friend, Mr. Klein, says, so you witnessed everything? And Mr. Casey says, yes, I witnessed everything. You guys need to meet me in my office later. There's going to be some kind of, ramifications to what's going on here. And so we're like, okay. And so then Dave Klein asks him, so who won? You saw everything. Who won? He says, this conversation's over, gentlemen. And it was just so funny. And I think our penalty was we couldn't park in the parking lot for a month.
It's better than like jail or something.
It's not bad. Yeah, it was not bad, 'cause I think that penalty actually served about maybe 3 or 4 days of it, and then we were back in the parking lot. It slowed down the road rallies a little bit. Yeah, but what it really did was open up clearly defined rules on. Once we get within a mile of school, the race is over.
Slow down.
Yeah, it's
how fast were you going?
Well, they were just old beat up trucks, so they didn't go that fast. My little Ford Courier, wouldn't go that fast. But I mean, I don't know. I think the speedometer was broke probably in both of our cars anyway, so we really couldn't tell.
So, football, baseball, basketball, and street racing.
Well,
you're a man of many talents.
Yeah, it was slow street racing. It was slow, careful street racing with a partner. You had to have a partner. If you didn't have a partner, you couldn't play. And then it got really big. Like there was 3, 4, 5 cars involved all the time. So we'd all go to the same place at lunch, and it was a lot of fun.
Did my uncles ever partake in that? By the way, you remember?
I doubt it. They were squared away kids, and worried about their education and making good choices.
Sure.
That's funny. That sounds like pretty intense and high speed. Were you into other kind of like adrenaline activities as a high schooler?
Yeah, adrenaline, and we really weren't going that fast. It's not like the cars today. I mean, we're talking, I think I had a 1972 Ford Courier.
That's cool.
At what point, like in high school, being a 3-sport athlete, I'm curious, like when did you start to, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like when did you really start thinking like, this is something that I truly am passionate about? Sports, football, especially. How did that just evolve throughout high school in terms of your passion for the games?
I don't think it ever did. It was just a different era. Like I said, we didn't have social media. We didn't have all this self-promotional that the kids are involved with now, and the parents are chasing these colleges when they're 10 years old, and none of that stuff existed. We got up every day and we just wanted to play. And our favorite sport was always the sport we were playing.
Yeah.
When football would end, about a month afterwards, we loved basketball. We loved playing for Coach Antonetti and going to that gym. And when that would end, we couldn't wait to go out on the baseball field. Rick Jones was my coach, and we just loved compete. We never thought about. I never thought about college or what we were doing. That wasn't kind of what we were doing. We were just playing, having fun. It was,
in the moment.
Yeah, it was recess. It really was. And looking back, I'm glad. Because I look at our kids now and some of these parents now, they chase these things that don't exist, and they really have taken a lot of the fun, joy out of the whole purpose of sport. To play, have fun, and learn life lessons. And when you chase something that doesn't exist, I mean, the end is all the same. And you guys are both very good at what you did, so you can relate to that. So I never really thought about college until it dawned on me that I couldn't play high school sports anymore, and
ran out of years.
Yeah. And I got then I ended up going to Hayward State out of high school because they recruited me. The guy came and said, love to have you at Hayward State. And I didn't even know where Hayward State was. I'd never been out of Oakdale.
That's
really.
East Bay now, right?
East Bay, Cal State East Bay, and I had to go there for a recruiting trip. First time I ever drove, anywhere farther than a half hour out of Oakdale. I had to borrow my mom's car and Chuck's car, and got lost. Took me forever. And they're like, just, they thought it was simple, but for me it wasn't simple. Sure. Driving on the first time I ever drove on the freeway, I was probably 18 years old and lost in the Bay Area. And
oh my goodness. Different world, and it's crazy. It's only like an hour away, but still, it's so different than here.
Unbelievably different, And
was this for football or baseball? I'm sorry.
It's football. This is football.
Okay,
Just football. This is football. So I ended up playing at Hayward State for first year. I went to Hayward State, and I don't know how I got into school. I was an official Prop 48 kid. I don't know if people remember what Prop 48 kids are, but all these colleges, it's what parents tell their kids now when they say grades don't matter, they'll find a way to get you into school. It's not accurate now. Now you have to have meet the NCAA clearinghouse. This is before all that stuff, when every school got a handful of kids that didn't meet the academic criteria
Yeah.
to get them into school. They called it
Gotcha.
Prop 48.
Okay, I didn't know
Seldom
that.
did the
Yeah.
kids, seldom were they 5'7", 5'8",
Yeah.
kids that look like me
Gotcha.
in college. But I was actually a Prop 48 kid at Hayward State. That's how they got me in to school. And I lasted 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, hey, this ain't for me.
What about it? What about it wasn't for you? Would you say was it just the environment over there, or the program?
I love the campus. I love the team. I love the guys up there. Great human beings that turned out a lot of great coaches in the area that were from that group. I just didn't think football. I didn't love the football dynamics. I'd never seen coaches fight on the sidelines.
Okay.
Wow.
I'd never seen arguments on the side. I was signaling plays. I was just a redshirt freshman quarterback with the kid from Houston named Rick Neugebauer. We played in the Lions All-Star game together. It's funny. We had the Lions All-Star game, which I'm coaching this summer, and I'm coaching my son in it this summer, which will be fun. But we're sitting at dinner and talking about where we're going to school, and I said, I'm going to Hayward State. And he said, I'm going to Hayward State. And I said, how can 2 5'10" quarterbacks be going to the same school? This can't be good.
Yeah.
And quarterback coach is the same guy, and he was from Houston. So apparently we pieced together the dates, and he would drive by my house and tell me I was the guy, and he would leave my house and literally drive 15 minutes down the road and tell Rick he was the guy, and we both ended up going there. And he was a good coach. Dick Valois, a really good coach, and I love the offense. I love the system, and then we just didn't really have an offensive coordinator. They shared duties, and I was on the sidelines. I'd literally never seen coaches yell at each other on the sideline, and it just seemed a little bit dysfunctional to me. And they decided to name an offensive coordinator, and I thought they would name our quarterback guy, and I probably would have stayed, and they didn't. They named somebody else, and I just thought, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to a junior college and play. And then there was a quarterback there named Gerald Capps, and I think as young athletes, and you remember this, you look up to these guys, we've already talked about it, where Gerald for me was the guy, the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And we go to Hayward State, and I just thought football was like Oakdale everywhere, like you get 2 water breaks a day.
Yeah.
You're almost dying at practice, and it turns out it's not the way it was up there. You got to drink water whenever you want. And I couldn't believe it, and they had these water jugs. Everywhere we went, there was water, and I'm like, and I had to ask Gerald, is it okay if I drink water right now? He's like, yeah, you can drink. And he was actually the Manteca Buffalo quarterback, and I just thought he was the coolest thing ever. So he knew I was leaving. He just said, hey, before you make your next decision, you need to go see my guy. My guy is the Manteca head football coach, Mick Founts. He said, make an appointment, go talk to him. He'll help you out. So I did. I'd listen to anything Gerald told me to do, and Gerald hooked me up with Coach Founts at Manteca. I went to Manteca High School, sat in his classroom for a couple hours, and just talked about life, and I thought, wow, this guy's different. And I remember leaving that classroom thinking, wherever Mick's going, I'm going. Yeah. He was going to Delta to coach, and Gerald actually had just graduated that year, and he went to Delta to coach. So I'm like, this is an easy jump for me. I'm going to Delta,
right?
And I'm sure we'll get into it down the road about influences. But the reason I named my son Mick was after Mick Founts.
I was about to ask that.
It's just an interesting. It's an interesting story. He's actually going to speak at my retirement party on Saturday. It's just interesting to think that the Manteca head football coach is one of my main guys. It's just
Manteca became still is the rival.
Still is the rival, right? But there's a bond, right, between with football guys, and he's just but that was my Hayward State stuff, so I mean, I wouldn't. I'm glad I went there. I'm glad I learned those things that connected me with Gerald, which connected me with Mick, and I don't think things are accidents in this world. I think things happen for a reason. I think the Lord does things for us. Sometimes we think He's doing it to us, but He's not. He's doing it for us, and the Hayward State experience was just tremendous for me, tremendous.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready to be away from home. That was a big part of the problem. I was 18 and, had too much Oakdale in me at the time. I just didn't know how to function away from my safe haven here.
Yeah, yeah.
As a young man at that time, was that one of the first times where someone kind of played that like guidance figure in your life, or had you had other people?
Like I said, my mom remarried when I was 9. Chuck Pennington is the greatest man I've ever met in my life. Very respected in town here, and just a great man. He was great, but as far as an athletic guy that really, it was big. Yeah, Mick was big to me, and I think I probably missed a lot of opportunities. It's because your brain's not wired right. When you're young, you think you got all the answers. The problem is you just don't have all the questions, so you just don't look at the world like you do when you're older. So I've missed a lot of opportunities here. But for me, when I was, Mick he was that guy. I knew he was different. I knew this man's different. As a young man like you guys are, when you run into people in your lives, people are just different, and when they're different. There's something unique. There's a different energy. There's a different passion. There's just something different about human beings, and when you're around somebody, you get it. you know, and he was one of the first main influencers in my life.
Did you know it at the time, or did you reflect through the following years? How was that?
You know, I knew there was something different. I knew I needed some direction. And as soon as he said, it didn't matter where he said he was going, I knew I was going to go when I left that classroom. You know, he ended up starting his own educational stuff in Stockton. He became the superintendent of schools in San Joaquin County, which I actually spoke at that fundraiser for him, which is interesting, being a Manteca function, having an Oakdale head football coach there. But I remember I had great friends at Delta College, and we had a lot of fun. It seemed like everywhere I went, we had fun. That seemed to be the top priority. It was never about, getting an education and doing things right. It was about, we got up every single day with tons of energy, tons of passion, and we were having fun. And so I had great friends at Delta, and I lived in Stockton. I loved living in Stockton.
Was Stockton back then Stockton like it is now in terms of just what we got going on over there?
Yeah, I think Stockton's Stockton. But again, it was, now I'm old and I'm wiser, and now I look at it, I'm like, did I really live right there? Did I live in that neighborhood? And did I really live in those apartments right there? Yeah, I think Stockton's always been Stockton.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it, which is funny. Ignorance is bliss, right? Like my mama used to always say. And I was ignorant to a lot of things. But after I graduated college from a 4-year school, Coach Founts, Mick, ran into a kid he coached, Tim Beatty, a good friend of mine now that, lives in Ohio. And he just says, hey, what's Merz doing now? And he said, believe it or not, we both just graduated college. We both actually got our degrees. And which is funny in itself. And Mick just said, hey, have him call me.
Yeah.
I got a job.
Okay.
So I called Mick the next day. And it had been a couple of years probably since I talked to him. And called him next day, and he says, you want a teaching job? And I'm like, yep. And he hired me.
Okay.
I never interviewed. I never did anything. I was in the classroom literally 3 days later.
Where at? What?
In San Joaquin County schools.
Okay.
Teaching in the one program. It's like an alternative ed stuff where kids get in trouble, get kicked out of school, they go to continuation, get kicked out of continuation, get kicked out of districts. They went to the one program back then. Well, Mick's a real visionary, and he started that one program. And my first teaching job was, he hired me.
And how was that?
That's cool.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I loved it. I actually loved it. It was a great experience. No books, no grades, just working with kids and kids that had issues. Yeah, it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And how long were you in that position for?
I was there for 6 years.
Wow.
6 years. I taught in the juvenile hall a little bit, which I love being in the juvenile hall. I
was
love
that
the one
like?
program.
Yeah,
The
what
juvenile
was that
hall
like?
was phenomenal. It was the greatest teaching experience ever. I just thought it was, like in that setting, the kids, they legally had had an hour of PE time, and then we had PE curriculum too. It was a 4-hour school day. 2 of it was in PE, and you could only have 10 kids on the yard. So if you had 15. You get the idea, broken down. We didn't do any discipline, the guards did. And if the kids didn't behave in the classroom, they got sent back to the cell all day long. Yeah. So when the kids came into your classroom, they really wanted to be in that classroom. And they didn't care what you were doing or what you were talking about. They wanted to participate 100%. And it was really just kind of a neat deal. And if anybody did anything wrong, then the guards took care of it. I never had to. I was their buddy, and we got to provide just a light to them. And, it's interesting because in that setting, nobody cared what everybody did, and I didn't want their story. I didn't want their background. It was interesting to have to get buzzed into rooms and buzzed in the hallways, and all that stuff was interesting to me. But it was a fun avenue to teach in with kids that really, really, really wanted to be in that room that day because it beat the hell out of the alternative, sitting in the cell. So it was fun to me. It was fun. And then I stayed there for 6 years until I became the head football coach at Oakdale. And I had to obviously come over and, teach on campus.
Yeah.
But it was a great way to learn how to teach and learn how to deal with kids
I bet.
and humans.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like a crash course to getting thrown in with probably the most complex dynamic, right? They had to have been, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, there's no books. So we did a lot of newspaper stuff and a lot of current event stuff and just try to get them talking, try to get them learn how to write, reading stuff. And it was fun though. It was great.
Would you say that a lot of that experience has translated into how you've developed as a coach or as a leader?
No question. That stuff, and me not being great in the classroom obviously played a big role, and played a big role in reaching kids. I think a lot of teachers and coaches maybe, but especially teachers, they never struggled academically. They didn't know what it was like to not get an A. I know there's probably teachers at Oakdale High School that never got anything less than an A. And if they get a B, they probably remember that 1 or 2 Bs they got, and if you've never struggled at something, you can't understand how people do.
Yeah.
If you always have, goals and you have a setting at home that was perfect for the academic environment, what my kids have grown up in but their academic goals is totally different than what my academic goals were growing up. And you just can't relate to it, and for me, I get it. I know why kids struggle. It's not a priority. Maybe it's not, it's not a good situation at home. Maybe it's, it could be a myriad of things why kids struggle in school. But a lot of kids do struggle in school, but for me, it was great to see that.
Yeah.
And now I relate real well to kids that didn't love the classroom.
Yeah. Let's talk about the chapter after spending 6 years at the juvenile hall. How did you pivot back to Oakdale? How did your coaching, your teaching career start at Oakdale High?
What's funny is I got great advice, and I was always, one of my keys to my success, I think, is I've always been willing to listen to people that were better than me or smarter than me. I always took advice.
Yeah. That's hard for people to do, especially in this modern day.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, but it wasn't for me because I just knew who I was. Even back then, I knew I needed some. And my friend, one of my best friends, Craig DeVal, I already mentioned him. He told me, he said, just doesn't matter what you get a degree in, get a degree. He goes, you'll get a degree and you can come sell insurance for me. And he was living down in LA at the time, just got married, and I thought, I'm just gonna get a degree. It doesn't matter. I got into Hayward State, and they basically picked my major. They told me you'll be a physical education major. We can get you in that way. You need to do this, this, and this. We can get you into school. And so that's what I was. I was a physical education major because they told me, that's what I was. And when I ended up at the 4-year school, I ended up going to University of Dubuque in Iowa to continue to play football. It was brutally hard. Physical education and health, I realized, hey man, this stuff's hard.
There's more to it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, It was brutal. And our doctor of phys ed, the head of the department, Dr. Eider, he's a wrestling coach. He just said, if you guys want something easy, take history. It never changes. Go to English. He goes, you guys are in the phys ed department. He goes, you guys aren't going to make it.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh boy, what I get myself into. And it's really just all science and anatomy, physiology, and physiology of exercise, and biomechanics, and it was pretty incredible. It was hard. But when I got done out there, I came home, and my buddy, I've already mentioned him, Tim, just said, hey, can you believe it? Both of us have graduated. He graduated from Northridge State, and I graduated from, I said, technically I'm not graduating. I need one class. I was never able to get my math class out of the way. I struggled with math. I think I couldn't pass math now.
Hey, me too.
I'm great with grocery store math, but man, you put a letter in there, you put a letter with a number, man, and that ain't math, that's English. And it just screws me up, and I flunked it in high school, and I couldn't pass it. So I probably was 0 for 4 in college. I tried everything. I took it at 6 a.m. thinking, I'll get up and focus. I didn't, and it was too hard on my social life. And I was probably literally 0 for 4, so I came home thinking, needing one class. They let you graduate. And my buddy said, can you believe we graduated? And I said, no, I can't. I go, people can graduate with a degree. If we can get it done, anybody can get it done. And it didn't take us 4 years. It took us like 5 or 6. But nobody's ever asked me how long it took me to get through college.
Yeah, you got it done.
I got it done. And I was hurt. I had back surgery in the middle, so I missed a semester, and then I transferred. And then, I had some different health issues too, football-wise. And then he says, what class do you need? I said, I still need a math class, man. I can't pass my math class. And he said, you won't believe this. He goes, I need a math class. That's the only class I need from Northridge. I'm like, dude. So we called our schools. We got back together and we said, dude, they're going to take a class at Delta. So my buddy and I got to go back to Delta, take one class.
That's cool.
And it was called History of Mathematics.
Okay.
And we're in class at Delta on Monday nights. So we went down there. It was one night a week we'd go there. And the first class, they were talking about addition. And they were talking about subtraction. And we look at each other like, we have found our class.
We got this.
We got this. And then it was like a 4-hour class on Monday nights. And then they would always have a big break in the middle so we can get something to eat. And it was Monday night in the fall. So then we stumbled into El Chorritos where they had food at the bar. And so we didn't always make it back to the second portion of class. And then class did get a little more difficult as it went on. But we managed to graduate together.
That's cool.
History of Mathematics. It was pretty funny, but worked for us.
Yeah.
It worked for us.
Gotcha. And so then after that, how did it going back to Oakdale and coaching in terms of how you got there?
I was still looking. I got back with the degree, and I thought I would find a job real quick. Well, my buddy no longer lived in L.A. He was doing it in Texas, and I knew I wasn't moving to Texas. I thought I could just find a job. I have a college degree. He grew up in Oakdale. I was shocked that I had a degree. I got a degree and couldn't find a job. I worked in a group home for probably about a year. Only job I could get, and I started coaching. Coach Malone got me coaching when I had back surgery at Delta College. He talked me into helping him coach baseball, JV baseball, and I really enjoyed it. And got me coaching again when I was working at the group home in Turlock, and living with my buddy Larry Mendonça, who's now our superintendent of schools now. You know, my roommate was Craig Redmond, who I coached at you know, when Mark had me helping when I was still at Delta. Craig Redmond was on the sophomore baseball team.
Okay.
And then later on, we actually lived with Larry, and Craig now is our human resources guy.
Gotcha.
The world's real small,
Yeah.
you know, and I just got into coaching, and I finally did it for a couple of years, and I finally just asked somebody, I'm like, hey, I finally found something I was decent at.
Yeah.
You know, I understood that world. That's all I ever knew growing up. You know, I understood the game. I understood the competitiveness of it, and I was just drawn to it, you know, and I just finally had to ask somebody. I said, how do I do this for a living? You know, I think it was Mark or Rob Steves, another great mentor of mine in the baseball program. He just said, well, you got to get your teach credential. And I'm like, oh boy, more school. You know, like, what's a teaching credential? I literally had no idea. And then so they pointed me in a direction. I went to National University with, you know, carpooled with two great guys, Brett DeRossett, great athlete out of Ceres, and Jimmy Davis, now the baseball AD, baseball coach at Grigori.
Okay.
We carpooled together, and we got our credential together.
Nice.
And so I figured it all out. I was an in-house suspension guy at Oakdale while I was coaching and going getting my credential. And then I ended up student teaching for John Quacha, one of the great influencers of my life. He was just a great man. He was our defensive coordinator when I played football here and coached baseball as well my freshman year. And we just loved Coach Q. And I student taught for him, which was a pretty neat thing. And then finally got done, and Mick Founts hired me to teach. And when I started coaching, and Mark got me coaching, and Rob got me coaching, I just enjoyed it. You know, I'm not good at many things. I'm really not. You know, I just played growing up. You know, and when I got to coaching, I thought, man, this is fun. I enjoy being around kids. I enjoy the game, and I think I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to find young coaches, and they really encouraged me to stay with it.
Yeah.
And I coached baseball probably for 12 years at Oakdale here.
I think a lot of people probably don't realize that or don't remember that
I
because you're
loved
such
it.
a legend when it comes to football, but people probably don't even realize
You know,
that you were so involved in baseball as well.
Yeah, you know, I coached baseball up until I took the program over in football.
And what
And
year
then-
was that when you took the program over?
2000.
2000. Okay.
Yep. So Hardo Polk and I were we were the freshman baseball coaches one year
Okay,
together.
yeah.
We were just laughing about that the other
Yeah.
day. Like, that's pretty funny because he's just a legendary baseball coach
Totally.
here, right? And I went into a different world, but we coached freshman baseball.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
seeing a poster like on his wall or somebody's wall back in like late 90s or something, and I was like, is that like Merzon? And someone's like, yeah, he used to coach baseball here. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? I had no idea.
Yeah, no, I loved coaching baseball, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it just became too much when I took over the football program.
Yeah.
I just became too much. I needed to spend more time figuring out, you know, what my kids were doing.
Sure.
You know, on other parts of the campus.
What was like your coaching philosophy? Like, how did how'd that develop? You know, when you became a coach, how did you motivate the kids?
Yeah, you know, it's evolved. You know, it really has evolved. And like I said, I've had great mentors, Mark Malone being one of them. I think he's the hardest working, highest character guy I've ever been around in my life.
Great guy.
And I got to learn that all about accountability and expectations. And then I got Rob Steves, who, again, is just a tremendous man. And I had great mentors. So my philosophies, it's just kind of evolved. You know, I look back, it's funny because now, you know, with my retirement party coming up and me retiring, my wife put together all these scrapbooks, and I was looking back through these scrapbooks thinking, oh, wow, man, I think I cheated some of these kids early in my career, you know, with what I thought was important and what I was chasing, you know. But again, one of my blessings is that I've always been able to talk to people that are better than me, and I was never afraid to tell people I didn't have the answer, that I was confused, that I really don't know, please help. And I've done that throughout my entire career. I just call people and say, please help, I am screwed up right now, I'm in a situation, what would you do? And I would call different people, and they just kind of give me advice, and you just morph through the years, right? I mean, I was young, and our coaching staff we were all young, Tim Meyer, Hondo Opoka, Mike Hogwood, you know, and we were young, and but we coached hard.
Yeah.
We were passionate. You know, the passion's never dimmed. The passion's always been there. I'm a lot wiser now. You know, you choose your battles a little bit better now, but we were always passionate.
Yeah.
And we had great kiddos, many of which we talked about earlier down at the that are playing beer league softball right now on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
It's fun to go down there and see these different humans.
Yeah.
You know, and I just kind of smile because they know I was a different guy back then too, and I'm like, well, we were both quite a bit different.
Yeah.
You know, it's but I would say my philosophy it's changed. You know, Yeah, it's just morphed. I think you get better if you're a growth mindset. You know me, I'm a big growth mindset guy. I just think it's important to understand what a growth mindset is, and it's about understanding that you're supposed to struggle, understanding that you're supposed to fall down. In fact, if you do not struggle, you will not learn, and that's part of my philosophy in our program. You will struggle. We will struggle. And I just felt like, even early on, that it was my job as a coach to put my kids in positions where they're going to be better human beings down the road. It was never about winning football games. I mean, people in this community think it is, but it was about making boys into men, making them great fathers, making them great husbands, teaching them how not to leave when things get tough. And that's football. I think football, sports, but particularly football, it parallels life like no other sport. I mean, sometimes you can do everything right and get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
And it has no other bearing on anything in the world other than the guy across from you who's better and he's bigger and he's stronger. And nobody cares. Nobody cares that it's hot outside. Nobody cares that you had a bad day. Nobody cares that you're injured. You have a job to do and you need to do it. And I just kind of embraced that thing that my job as a coach is to put our kids in situations where they're going to fail.
Yeah.
Because that's how you're truly going to grow.
Yeah.
It's
the only way. Yeah.
It's the only way, and that's going to practice. Our field is commonly 150 degrees out there, and we're not going to shut down. We don't shut down practice. It's just what we do. You don't get to, Gary Osmondson, a great friend of mine and a great coach, when kids would say things, he'd say the cows don't stop giving milk just because it's hot outside.
Right.
And you can hear him saying it too, right? And I'm like, that's just kind of our mindset. We're going to be there every single day, and we're going to show up every single day, and we're going to get better every single day. And I'm going to try to put the kids in a position every single day where they're going to struggle. Sometimes it's the temperature, sometimes it's what we do, sometimes it's just because it's hard. It's hard to fail. And when our kids fail, they fail publicly. Yeah. And that's kind of what the world is, though. When we fail as fathers, or we fail as husbands, or we fail at our job, it's public. Kids are...
Especially in Oakdale.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people here, let's not kid ourselves, that want to see people fail because somehow it makes them feel better about themselves. But there's so many people in today's world that will do anything to avoid struggle. They'll avoid struggle altogether so they can appear to be successful, but they're really not. And there's a lot of people that want to sit in the stands and avoid getting into the arena because they're so afraid of failing. And I just think we're so much better off to get inside that arena, get in the dirt and fail publicly and grow from it and learn from it. And that was kind of my philosophy early on. And all of our coaches, man, we were buddies. I'm blessed. I got to coach with my best friends. I got to coach with Tim Meyer and Andar Poca, Gary Osmondson, Mike Hogwood. I name all these coaches that I got to see every day. And we all shared that same philosophy. We all know, hey, life's hard. Yeah. Being a father's hard. Being a husband's hard. Doing the right thing is hard daily. And we all shared that same philosophy. That's why you see, Hondo was so successful.
Right.
And Gary is an unbelievable businessman in town. Tim is one of the greatest coaches to ever come through Oakdale High School, and he's coached more sports and won more championships and touched more lives in all these different sports. So we all shared that philosophy.
Let's talk a little bit about your evolution coaching at Oakdale High and managing expectations. I mean, obviously you growing up here, Oakdale, people expect to win. Oakdale football, sports in general are a huge part of the culture here. Everyone kind of goes to the games, especially football. Friday Night Lights culture is huge. Tell me about managing all of that as the head coach.
Yeah, that was an adjustment. And just, really trying to wrap my brain around what it is I wanted to accomplish. And you really got to kind of continually do self-checks, because if you're not careful, you can really get steered off the wrong, away from what it is you truly want to accomplish. For me, I say this, never been about the wins and the losses. But if I'd have lost for 23 years, I wouldn't be sitting in your van right now. I'm not foolish. But I think winning is a byproduct of a lot of little things. The expectations, and I've always been super competitive. We talked about my childhood. There's nobody that could put more pressure on me to have success than what I put on me to have success. And it's important to manage that. It wasn't the external pressure that's tough in this town, for me anyway. Sure, there's an occasional overpassionate, if that's a word, parent or fan, maybe disillusionment, but those were few and far between. I mean, the pressure to perform, I understood where I was. I understood the responsibility that I had when Coach Malone gave me this job. Well, the district gave me the job, but Coach Malone put me where I am today.
Right.
I understood, and all I ever wanted to do was to keep the train on the tracks. And I think my biggest failure taking taking the program was that we weren't going to win. We weren't going to be successful. And I wasn't going to be good. And people weren't going to listen. And it wasn't going to work. And it's overwhelming, when you truly understand what it all entails. It can be overwhelming, and the football aspect of it, Friday night stuff, that's the easy part. A lot of the people that want to critique me professionally want to critique my 3rd and long calls. Well, shit, 3rd and long is 3rd and long. You're not going to convert many of them. That's not what defines a coach. That stuff's easy. Football's easy. It's all the other stuff. It's the fundraising aspect of it. It's the dealing with expectations. Yeah. It's the daily grind. It's the
all the stuff people don't see. Really.
All the stuff they don't see, and it fills up a calendar year. It literally fills up a calendar year. Yesterday was the first day of summer workouts. First time I've been to a summer workout here in 25 years.
How's that feel?
Yeah, I got a text message from somebody saying, "Hey, is everything just checking in? Everything okay?" And I'm like, I didn't get up early in the morning, and I just said, I still got up. I'm old. I don't sleep very well. My daughter and I went to TPL in Modesto, and she worked out, so I was still up. Yeah. But yeah, it was different. It's different, but I don't feel the burden of trying to fix other people's problems right now. So, I'm good. I'm in a good place. But the expectations in this town, sometimes they're unrealistic. We're always supposed to win. You hear it all the time. Nobody cares how good we are. Nobody cares how good our opponents are. They just think we're supposed to have success. Yeah. And I just embrace it, to be honest with you. I really do. And I just thought, those people don't even know what it entails and what success entails. But to them, and to so many people in this community and people that watch our games now that don't even live around here and pay attention to what we're doing in that football program, it's important because it gives them an escape from the daily grind of life. Passion's funny. You'll never meet anybody more passionate than I am. So I understand passion. I also understand what it looks like when it bubbles over, because a big portion of who I am has been passion bubbling over. I don't mean to be the raving lunatic that I am, that I turn into, and I just haven't been able to turn it off for 23 years. So I understand people wanting us to have success. I get it. They live and die with it. Somebody saw me one time in Starbucks. People don't know this, but we meet as a coaching staff every Saturday after our games. Yeah. I'll watch film in my classroom, and I won't get home till 12 or 1 in the morning. Sometimes coaches are in there with me watching film. Sometimes they're not. But as soon as our game's over, I want to go back and watch film and see my mistakes. I want to do it when I'm still emotional. I want to do it when it's still fresh in my brain so I can understand why I did what I did. And if you wait and you lose that emotion of the moment, you can't really learn from it. But if I'm emotional, looking back on things, people want to know, why'd you make that decision when it didn't work? It's like, hey, no dummy. If I'd have known it wouldn't have worked, I wouldn't have done it. Yeah. At the time, though, I thought it was our best option. But when you make decisions, and people forget, you got 20 seconds to make a decision. You can't pause the film in life. You got to make a decision. I got 20 seconds before I make the next play call. We get 3 timeouts a half. That's not a lot of time. You got to make decisions. Sometimes it's about risk management at the time, and you try to do the best thing possible. But I watch film after the game, so I'm still emotional from the good decisions and the bad decisions, so I can learn from them and try to control my emotions the next time. Because the last thing you want to do is, when you make big decisions, is make them when you're emotional. I understand all that stuff, but then Saturday rolls around, and we meet as a staff at 8 o'clock, usually till about 1 o'clock. And then I'll go home, take a nap, hang out with my family, and then I'll end up watching more film, doing more paperwork that night. And then Sundays I'll be down there again, probably about another 5, 6, 7 hours. So managing all that stuff and understanding people's expectations, really, they don't understand all that stuff. They just want to know, and they want the Mustangs to be good, because when the Mustangs are good, they feel good. Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. And this guy sees me at Starbucks Saturday morning, probably 7 o'clock after a big win. I think it was probably playoff win. And he says, you don't understand. He sees me in line, buys my coffee. He says, you don't understand what this does for our community. And I said, yeah, the forest and the trees and all that stuff, And he says, we sit in the stands and we high five and hug people that we don't even like, because we have that common bond. And it's funny, that was like 14, 15 years ago that I remember that comment, and it stays with me. I'm like, wow, it made me really look at things differently. I look at who's at our games. I look at who's following us. I look at who's commenting to me and reaching out to me. And Oakdale's interesting, right? We're not what people think we are. We are an absolute anomaly. People think that they can define what Oakdale people are until you get here, and you're like, man, this isn't what I thought it was. And I'm like, no, but seldom is it, right? And it's like, it brings people together. Our program brings people together. Why football? I don't know. It's just I don't know. Maybe it's just the largest gathering spot in town with the rodeo. We have the rodeo, once a year,
Right.
and that's a lot of out-of-towners.
Yeah.
The corral holds about 4,500 people, and we've been known to put 7,000 people in there, and it just unites people for a common goal and a common bond. And that's the expectations that you have to measure, that you have to really understand. And we try to decompress our kids a lot because our kids feel that pressure. Our kids, more than anything, they don't want to win for themselves. They want to win for that. And people don't get it. People think these high school kids they don't get it. They're not like I was when I played here. I didn't get it. Our kids get this now, though. They understand. They look up in the stands. They know what it is. They know that field was built by community donations. They know what it's like to be in town here and have people talk to them, and they just really want to be a part of it and make people happy. So we're managing that with our kids. Like, hey, listen, man, success and failure, man, it's a fine line. Sometimes we're better than teams. Sometimes we're not. And games and winning and losing, man, it's the difference is it's a fine line, and more often than people want to admit that are involved with this game, it has to do with luck. Were you healthy, and was the other team healthy? We went through one year. I didn't think we were very good physically, and we ended up winning a title. Every team we played had their best player out. Every team we played had their best player out, and it was uncanny. We're like, oh my God, running backs out, quarterbacks out, all these different guys are out, and we just kind of rolled through league because they didn't have their best players. Then we've had other years where the same thing happened to us. That was us last year. We didn't play one game last year where we had our starters all in. We didn't play one game. And people said, how disappointing was it? I'm like, you guys, you don't understand. I mean, so much of it's luck, and so much of it's who you play.
Truly.
You can be average and be the best team in your league. Or you can be great and be the third best team in our league. We were good last year. We were the fourth best team in our league. We play teams right now that they're off the chart, and they recruit, and they go get different kids. And I'm not talking about just Central Catholic. I'm talking about Manteca. Manteca gets kids from all over the place, all over the place. It's a town of 65,000 that has open enrollment. If you're any good in football in Manteca, you go to Manteca High School, and they get Ripon kids, and they get Tracy kids, and they get all these different transfers. And for me, I've never, ever, somebody told me not long ago that I need to have a camp here because I know I could get a lot of people here. I never wanted anybody else's kids. I wanted my kids.
Right.
I never wanted to out-resource Oakdale kids. Oakdale kids are unique. Yeah, we're not very big and we're not very fast, but our skill set is we're tough and we're resilient and we buy in and we love each other and we love this town. I never wanted to go out-resource that because that's who I was growing up in this town. 100%. So for me, it's not always about winning and losing because of that. Could we go get other people's kids? Sure. I mean, we got better facilities and we got better coaches and we got better everything. Sure we could, but I don't want other people's kids. I'd rather come in second or third with my kids than to win with somebody else's kids. I can never see myself wanting to do what Central does or wanting to do what Manteca does or wanting to do what, some of the schools in Modesto do. I want my guys. I want OKGs. I want Oakdale kids, and I'll win and lose with what we got. But managing the expectations, that's all part of it, right? Like, and understanding the expectations. Like people in this town don't do it because they're malicious. They do it because it's just an escape. It's an escape from, their lives.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like when you're from Oakdale, you really feel that you're playing more so, not necessarily for a school, but you're playing for your home. And I feel like a lot of other schools, you don't feel that as much. It's not as front and center. That's something that I think always differentiates Oakdale.
Yeah, nobody goes to Central Catholic because they want to better that institution. They go to Central Catholic because they want to better their own lives. Nobody transfers into a Manteca because they want to glorify a town they don't live in.
Right.
Right. They want to better their own lives individually, and I get that, and I'm okay with that. That's part of the world, and I believe in that world. Being a conservative Christian, I believe that you should be able to go wherever it's going to best fit you. But our kids here, they truly want to glorify our zip code. They truly want to win for Oakdale High School, and that's what makes losing so hard. Because you see the devastation on our kids' faces.
95361. I remember the shirt that you'd wear sometimes. Love that shirt.
Yeah, I popped that out randomly, and people were like, they were shocked to see it. Even people in Oakdale were shocked to see it, and they're like, "Why do you have your zip code on your shirt?" And I said, "Because our zip code defines us. Oakdale doesn't always define us because we get kids that will, maybe not live here. Our zip code defines us." And it's funny because I wear that shirt on the road. I wear that shirt as coaching shirts. I wear that shirt. I wore it to our state title game, and it's amazing how offensive and how irritated people get at that shirt. because they know what I'm saying. They know what my statement is, that this is truly all about this zip code. This is truly all about 95361. The good, the bad, the indifferent. Our opponents, man, they never get to dictate or define who we are. We do. Whether we win or we lose, it has nothing to do with our opponents. It's all about us.
Yeah.
And they know that zip code shirt. When you start seeing that zip code around, they know what it means. They know it's an arrogant statement that I really only care about my zip code.
I love that.
And it's part of the gig.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Looking back on your 23 years, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your overall record was it 225, 62, and 1, something like that?
Somewhere around there.
Averaging 10 wins a season, I believe. I think I read that. What are some of your fondest memories, the memories that make you the most proud, the memories that really stick out to you throughout the years?
Yeah, again, you've heard me say it's not about the winning and the losing, but yeah, like I said, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't about being, winning. And we started having some success early on, and that number 10 meant a lot to me, right? Trying to average 10 wins. And it's 23 years as head coach, but it's really 22 and a half because we lost half a year to COVID. And so, and I don't like to dismiss that half a year of COVID loss, because that was a big half a year to those kids that lost that year. What we did to our kids here is, across the country, was just criminal, and it hurts my heart.
Yeah.
So just to pretend that it didn't happen, like society's going to want to wash that year away, I just refuse to let that happen. So I proudly say I coached for 22 and a half years, and I want people to ask why. And just to honor our kids, not just Oakdale kids, but kids across the country that lost.
That's traumatic for kids. It's traumatizing.
They just lost a piece of their life that never should have happened, because we ask kids to protect adults, and that's not the way it's supposed to happen. But we won't get into that political downturn. But the number 10 stood out to me early on, and I thought, if we can average 10 wins a year, man, what a statement. That's comparable across any sport, right? Whether you're a baseball coach, whether you're a basketball coach, whether you're a hockey guy, it doesn't matter. We got 10 games a year. So if you're coaching baseball and you get 25 games a year, then that's the mark. We average 10 wins a year for 22 and a half years. And you can actually go back 25 years and talk about Mark's last 2 or 3 years. So for the last 25 years, we're averaging 10 wins a year, which is incredible for a one high school town across the state of California. And I don't think anybody in the state of California can make that statement.
Sure.
Maybe in the country can make that statement.
It's huge.
Any public school anyway. Because you only get 10 games. So, we've won an awful lot. When I took over the program, I told you I was scared to death. I've been scared for 22 and a half years that I was going to fail. I don't think I ever coached a game that I thought I was going to win.
Interesting.
It's an insecurity. It's not a strength. Never one time in 22 and a half years did my coaching staff ever prepare for the game after that one we were playing.
Interesting.
We never did it, ever. And I know people do it. We never did it. We were always scared to death. And I think I'm an anxiety guy. I've had panic attacks. I wear that stuff. And when I took over the program, when I tell you I was scared to death that I was going to fail and let people down, that I truly meant it. One of my most important wins I ever had was my first one, because I realized, I might not win another game, but I'm going to win one. Yeah. And we beat Turlock over at their place, and I thought, okay, I won a game. Yeah. I can do this. And we upset them, and I could circle 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but I never coached a game where I was comfortable. I would convince myself, and it usually started on a Tuesday or a Monday. When I watch film, all I see is our inadequacies. All I see is my inadequacies, how I got to get better and how we got to get better. And then I watch our opponents, and I don't see their inadequacies. I just see all of their attributes. And usually after doing that for 48 hours consecutively, I just convince myself that somehow we're not going to win this game. When we lose games to great teams, there's no shame in that. But when we lose games to teams that aren't very good, that one hurts, and that hurts our kids. So I was always backwards in how I did things. We had some big wins. Obviously, that section title game where we came back at halftime. I've always liked those games where I felt like people had to talk about stuff other than the scoreboard. People had to talk about the heart. People had to talk about the grit. People had to talk about, our team chemistry. People had to talk about how much we love each other. I always loved those games and those moments where that stuff surfaced, and not one particular great player, one particular bad player. Because for me, games never come down to one play, never comes down to one kid, never comes down to one anything, right? It's all just a collection of, I know non-football people think that the game comes down to one play at the end. And I'm always that guy that says, nah, if we'd have done things right in the first quarter, if I'd have made a bit different decision, before halftime, if I'd have made a different decision in the opening kickoff, that last play never would have happened that way. And our kids start believing that because we don't allow them to think the game's come down to one play. Yeah. But we've had some great finishes. We've had some games where our kids are just talked about, and it's amazing. Sometimes they're talked about in losses. We lost to Kimball a couple years ago over at their place. People still say it might have been the greatest game they've ever seen. And they beat us probably 65-62 or whatever it was. It was an unbelievable game, and they talk about it. We lost a game to Sierra at our place where they kicked a field goal at the end and beat us, and then we didn't get one at the end, and they beat us like 55-53. And people rave about who and what our kids are. That's where I get proud. It's not about, that one win or, obviously beating the Raiders over there. The Raiders have been in our league over there now for 8 years. We beat them 4 out of the 8 years with our kids.
I remember that one year when my cousin Will
and your cousin
was on the team.
Our kids and your cousin.
That's why you guys won state. I mean, that was great.
And all that happened after we lost our first game.
Yeah,
that's what's beautiful about that story.
Yeah.
Sonora beat us for the first time in a decade.
Yeah.
We didn't play real well. I didn't coach real well. I made a ton of terrible decisions. Yeah. And I've never had a problem telling people when I screw up. But we played the next week after losing to Sonora. That's when you guys did the documentary. And we had 11 new kids in different spots the next week. I mean, which says I was because we spent all summer thinking we had answers. And obviously my answers were not answers. It just provided more questions. And then we won the next week, and then we ended up beating Campolindo, and we kind of went on a run.
I remember you told me, this always stuck with me. This was in the documentary, but like the definition of an OKG is like the measure of a man, the measure of a team is how you respond when things aren't going well, not how you respond when things are going well. That always really stuck with me. Tell me a little bit about, you've been a molder of men for years on and off the field. You've seen so many different players coming in and out of the program. You've watched them growing up, now having kids, raising families. What's that feeling like in terms of just that responsibility that you've taken on throughout the past 20 plus years?
Yeah, I mean, the world's changing, and I think I'm stuck. I'm not. And I made that comment, and I think I hurt some feelings. There was a newspaper article, and they just kind of talked about why is football important. And it hit the magazines. Maybe it was I don't know if it was a magazine or an internet thing, and I made some comments in it about the world's changing. I refuse to, and I think the world today needs leaders. I think the world needs today people, especially men, that will do the right thing even when nobody's watching. As a Christian, listen, man, I'm a sinner. I screw it up all the time, and I get it. But I think the goal is to never screw it up. The goal is to be good for people. And listen, man, you guys are young men. You guys had great mentors growing up. Your father was one of the greatest people I've ever known. Your mom's truly just a tremendous woman. But there's a lot of people that don't have that. Yeah. And they don't have people telling them when they're wrong. We set expectations for our guys. We lift at 6:15 year round, not because I love getting out of bed and being a prick, but because I think men get out of bed in the morning. And men get out of bed when they don't want to get out of bed. And men get out of bed when things aren't going good. No matter what, you respond. You don't get it's not a choice. Doing the right thing, it's not hard. I mean, people know what the right thing is, but people don't do it. And I just thought early on, and I had great coaches that believed what I believed. Tim, Hondo, Gary. I mean, I can name a bunch of these guys that believe what I believe. They're just great men that our jobs as coaches is to teach these kids how to be great husbands and to teach these kids how to be great fathers and to lead by example, and I mean, my biggest trophies are my 2 children, and it's been hard, but I think being public here in this town, it's our jobs as coaches, as mentors, to set examples and to deliver tough messages, no matter what the age group or no matter who it is you're delivering that message to. It's important. And I'm not saying I don't make mistakes, man. I screw things up daily. There's daily I look back at conversations and wish I'd have done things different, handled things differently. And like I said, passion sometimes screws things up, but being a mentor in this town is super important for our kids. I had them. I grew up with them, and my mentors loved me in a very unique way. They didn't try to change who I was. They made me feel okay with who I was, okay in my own skin, and they gently told me that, I was making poor decisions or poor choices or whatever, but they never changed my true DNA. I didn't know, not everybody here in Oakdale has to think the same way or do the same things. We're all similar, I think, because of our surroundings. But I had great mentors, and I just wanted to pay it forward. Mark Malone getting me into coaching changed my life. It gave me a career. And then other guys, Rob Steves and all the guys that touched my coaching life, they made me good at it. But those guys gave me a career, and they really just placed a responsibility on me, like, okay, it's your turn now. You have to. I played for Jimmy Gilbert here, just a great man. I played for Dale Clipper, one of the legendary coaches at Oakdale High School, was my first freshman coach. He said something to me I'll never forget. We're on that. Back then, it was the old JV baseball field next to the tennis courts, where you could hit the ball in the big oak tree. That was our freshman practice. I'd never played football before, and I was trying to play quarterback, and I threw about 3 or 4 balls exactly the same into the dirt, and I was just missing. And he finally walked by and got irritated. I never had a man yell at me before. I've never had a coach. You played Little League baseball, usually playing for somebody's dad, and I never had a coach get on me before. And he yelled at me, and he said, for God's sakes, how many times are you going to make the same mistake? Make an adjustment. Stop doing the same thing wrong. Make an adjustment. And it stayed with me today. And I'm not sure that comment was really directed at me throwing a football. It's about, me being a human, me being a mentor. When things are broken, fix it. When something isn't working, stop doing it. Rob Steves had this great comment he used to say, hey, do something different, even if it's wrong. Quit doing the same wrong thing. And it just really stayed with me, but those were my mentors growing up. So when I became the head guy, I knew that, just like anything, like it was my responsibility. I set the pace. One of the most important things a head coach does in a sport is hire assistant coaches. And I fully understood that. One of the most important things I had to do as the head football coach at Oakdale High School was to get great men that shared my vision, that could impact these kids. And I think so many people who coach don't understand that concept. Like, my number one job is to get great assistant coaches that can impact kids, because you can't impact everybody on your own.
Right. Learning how to delegate, in a sense.
You're learning how to delegate the responsibility to being great mentors, and then setting the bar, and then always being there and being able to coach adults and coach coaches. And I was blessed. I had great people along the road with me. But I did understand, taking over this program, what it truly entailed about being a mentor, because I had them. And I wouldn't be where I am without them. And it's about paying it forward, and just embracing those opportunities.
Yeah. When you look back on it all, how have you, in your opinion, evolved, grown, changed from, kind of day one in your coaching career to now? You've now retired. You've built this amazing legacy. You've helped countless players. How have you personally, changed, evolved, grown?
Yeah, no, I've changed. Having kids, obviously, when you realize how we talk to humans or how we talk to other people, we laugh about that Wednesday night beer softball league, but those people playing down there were my early years. And I just look back at how we used to coach those kids, and we were hard, and I'm hard. I'm hard on coaches. I'm hard on kids. I'm hard. I mean, if you talk to any of my assistant coaches, they'll tell you I'm hard. I'm hard on people. And I just figure if I'm hard on myself, I can be hard on everybody else in my life. As far as expectations goes and doing the right thing and working and putting the hours in and putting the time in, I'm hard. But my son was born in 2004, and I look back at those early years and how hard we used to coach those kids and how tough those kids were. Tough. The Alfaros, the Coles, the O'Haras. I just look at those guys, and Gravettes, Bobby Mungus, Brazil. I mean, I look at those guys. I see them now, and they're tough now.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no way you could have survived that era of Oakdale football without being tough. We were tough. We weren't getting up at 6 a.m, but, man, we practiced for 3 hours. And I used to have parents back then tell me we don't hit enough. We don't hit enough.
That's the opposite probably now.
Oh, it's the exact opposite. And it's like those parents back then wanted that. They expected it. They told me I was soft. Nobody ever told me I was soft. They said you need to be more physical, and we did. And it was just funny. And then, Mick being born, I wouldn't necessarily say it was my pre-Christian days, but it was. It really, I didn't become a Christian until, Mick was born in 2005, and I just realized for the first time in my life, there's things in this world that I can't fix. There's things in this world that are beyond my control. Growing up here, not having a ton, I always thought that whatever I had was what I had. Whatever I had, I'm going to fix. I'm going to fight for. I'm going to, and then when I had Mick, and he had some seizures when he was little, and I remember thinking I lost him. And I remember thinking there's nothing I can do to to help him, and brought me the Lord, and when I became a Christian, I mean, the people that played for me back then aren't going to believe it softened me at all, but it gave me a different purpose. It gave me a different fundamental background. And when my cup would run empty, I know it was Christ that filled it back up. It really became not about winning and losing then, because then I truly understood it's about influencing young men and making them understand what was going on and who we were and what it was all about. I mean, that was a huge difference for me when Mick was born, and then my daughter came along in 2006, and probably softened me more. I mean, what a blessing though. I mean, getting to my daughter, getting to give my daughter a kiss before every game when she brings the flag off the field, holding her hand, walking across the field, getting to coach my son. My two biggest trophies were my children, and I've always felt like my responsibility in this town, because I know a lot of people that coach that put so much into coaching that their lives at home didn't finish the way it should. You see addiction, you see all this different stuff. My wife is just a tremendous, tremendous woman. She's the nuts and bolts behind this whole organization, because when coaching wives aren't 100% behind their husband, then the husband doesn't put in the time he needs to put in.
Sure.
It has to be a complete picture or it's going to be broken. And I've seen a lot of brokenness. My wife is just magical with how hard she supported this program and supported me and got it and understood it. We became Christians together, but it's just a blessing, to be honest with you. And my children are just my trophies. They grow up with everybody looking at them, and they've done it their entire lives. And yeah, there's a lot of people that want to see my kids have success, and there's also a lot of people that want to see that last name fail for a myriad of reasons. But my kids have embraced it. They understand the narcissistic approach, and that no matter what they do is probably not going to be good enough. They get it.
Yeah.
And I just tell them it's part of life. I'm not going to say that pressure is a privilege, because I really don't know what that means. But there is a different kind of pressure when you grow up in front of people. But I've just always embraced it. And I thought, my kids have, my wife has too. We've never ran from it. We live in town. We shop in town. If I can avoid it, I won't shop anywhere else. I'll pay my money in Oakdale. I'm just blessed.
Well, we'll wrap up here pretty soon. We've been going for a while. I want to ask you, now that you've retired, what would you say the one thing that you're going to miss the most, and what's the one thing that you're not going to miss at all? So I'm sure there's at least one thing in there. And also, how does it feel as well now that you're retired?
The stuff I'm not going to miss, it's really hard, and it's getting worse in today's world. I'm not going to go off on a tangent about today's society with social media, but social media is destroying humanity. I laugh and I tell kids all the time, and I say, can you imagine me coaching as a highlight film? And I'd put a highlight film together of me coaching, and then your parents would see it and they'd see, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't hear him say the F word. I don't hear him scream at you. I don't hear him, being the crazy guy that you talk about. And the kids just kind of laugh. And I'm like, that's exactly what people my age think about you guys in your highlight films with your little videos that you post. It's not real. It's not real. And I just think social media is destroying people, and it's destroying how we communicate. And nothing's real anymore. And it's hard. But the hardest part that I'm not gonna miss it is having to meet with kids and parents that don't want to embrace that mentorship role that I believe is their responsibility. Meeting with kids that have addiction issues. I know kids aren't angels, especially growing up here in Oakdale. I know kids do things they're not supposed to do. For me, it was always I'm never going to get involved in your personal life on your time until it starts impacting my time.
Sure.
And when you're showing up and you're not giving what I think you should give, or you're not showing up all the time, and your grades aren't what they should be, and your effort's not what it should be, I'm going to get involved, and I'm going to talk to the kid. If it doesn't work, I'm going to talk to the parents. And every year I spend energy talking to parents about trying to corral their kids, and I'm not going to miss that talk, because the parents don't want to receive it. They don't want to believe it, most of them, and it's just hard. And I've always been so driven that anything that interfered with my vision on what I felt was important had to be taken care of, had to be dealt with. And I never really cared about being popular. I've never really cared about being liked. And I think that's one of the biggest misnomers in society. People tell me all the time that their kids are great leaders. And I'm like, so your kid's not very well liked? And they're like, oh no, everybody likes my kid. And I'm like, then your kid's a leader. Yeah. In order to be a leader, you have to be able to take people in a direction that they wouldn't otherwise already be going without you. And people misconstrue that word leader. Like if you're going to lead somebody, you're going to have to take them in a direction that they wouldn't otherwise already be going without you. If they're already going in that direction, then they don't need you. Quit pretending to be their leader. They don't need it. Leaders in this society, it's not about being a leader. It's about being popular and about being liked. And it's about how many likes you can get on your post. And these parents do the same thing with these Facebook rants. And it's all crap, you know, and it's getting harder and harder to reach kids because there's less and less reality with kids. You know, I mean, how many times do kids like these posts we talked about earlier that they don't really like, but they don't want to be disliked?
Yeah.
And now that's carrying over into the real world intercommunicational skills of being face to face. You don't know if this person's just co-signing what you say because they don't want to be disliked, but then go ahead and talking bad about behind your back because it's happening everywhere. Humans are changing, and it's not for the better. And gosh, I'm just blessed and lucky that I didn't grow up in this world because I think the kids are just doing what they're allowed to do.
Yeah.
You know, a parent's job isn't to be the kid's buddy. It's really not. A parent's job is to set parameters and set goals. And kids are like dogs, man. They need structure. They need rules. They need to be told no. You know, they say it's not, I mean, you could read about it anywhere. Dogs crave discipline. So do humans. And if you don't provide discipline for your human, they're going to run amok. They're going to go as far as you allow them to go. And then once it gets there, it's too late to turn back. You can never unring a bell. I'm not going to miss having these conversations with parents that just don't get it.
Yeah.
And their kids don't get it. You cannot be a championship football player without discipline. You cannot be a championship husband without discipline. You definitely cannot be a championship father without discipline. It's hard. Life's hard. You guys are traveling the world. It's hard. It's a grind what you guys are doing. It doesn't come easy. All this stuff's hard. And you get out of it what you put in it. And I'm not going to miss those conversations because they're tough. And most of the time, they don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, and what I'm going to miss the relationships.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is like, I already told you that I convinced myself I was going to lose every football game I ever coached. And I convinced myself there's probably going to be me that screwed it up. And I rehearsed things in my sleep. I would dream things in my sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night and grab my notebook. I would write things down. I would have visions of things in my sleep. And maybe I wasn't even really sleeping. I'm not normal. I get it. But I do like that. I'm going to miss the passion. I hated Friday nights. I never enjoyed one Friday night coaching. I hated it. And it's probably because I was backwards in how I was motivated, right? I was so afraid of failure. And failure hurt so much worse than winning felt good. It was more of a release when I knew we weren't going to lose that week. And I know people don't understand that. There's probably a handful of people in the world that do. But I never enjoyed Friday nights, ever. Not one. I used to throw up when I played. I used to throw up when I coached. I used to have to tell my kids, hey, when you see me throwing up on the field in pregame, don't panic. I do it all the time. It's not that I don't believe in you guys. I do. You know, and I just think, you know, such a big part of coaching is making kids believe that they're better than what they really are. Yeah. You know, so I just wanted to make sure that when they saw me throwing up in pregame, that it wasn't a reflection because I thought we were going to lose. You know, I just tried to fake it. But what I do love is I love the Saturdays. I love turning on the film. I love the science of, you know, how can I put my kids in a position where they can have success? And I always told my kids, you know, if you guys screw it up and you fail, don't worry about it. I will wear it for you. I promise you. And if you have success, I'm going to let you have all of it with the media. And I think I've been true to that in 22 and a half years. But I'm going to miss those Saturdays. I'm going to miss those Mondays. I'm going to miss the Sunday evenings. I'm going to miss the Tuesday all-day grinds. I'm going to miss the Wednesday night practices. I'm going to miss the Thursday walkthroughs. I'm going to miss all that stuff, you know, mine against yours. I'm going to miss that. But the Fridays, I'm not going to miss it. I'm not at all.
Well said. There's a lot of insight there. And thanks for speaking so candidly, too, and transparently. That's, wow, yeah.
In terms of where you're going to channel that passion next, where are you headed? Where do you want to put that in? Obviously, family.
What's
and
next for Trent Merzon?
Yeah, you know, I want to get a van and
podcast.
You know, I don't know. You know, Mick's going to College of Idaho and Caldwell, and people wanted to know why I didn't continue coaching and taking a role. And I just said, you know, the way I coach, I don't think I could go enjoy his next endeavor without putting the time in here. I still love the game. There's nothing that's paled in any of that stuff. I'm not tired of coaching. I'm not burnt out. I'm better now than I've ever been, I think. People might disagree with that statement, but I truly feel that I am. But I just truly want to embrace Mick's next endeavor. I want to be able to get on a plane and fly into Boise and drive down to Caldwell and enjoy that experience. And I can't wait to just follow my daughter. You know, she's just a great kiddo, and You know, like I said, she got to hold my hand after every single game. How blessed am I? I mean, my wife does such a great job of putting my kids in this program. When you look back, ever since 2004, you'll see pictures of us after the game. You'll see my son. You mentioned Nicky Battiati, maybe the greatest football player athlete I've ever coached. That was one of Mick's first jerseys, number 4. His first one was number 22, a Buddy Wallace jersey. Then he used to always make these T-shirts. But my kids have been around my program forever. I'm so proud of who they are. I'm so proud of who my wife is. My kids have never received anything less than an A in school. They're just great humans. And somebody asked me the other day, I think it was just 2 days ago with my daughter there, you know, if I'm still going to be involved. And she just intervened and said, nope, he's done. He's mine now. And
I love that.
it just made me smile. You know, I'm a softball dad. You know, softball dads show up and they're angry all the time. They're angry at coaches. They're angry at umpires. They're angry at other parents. I'm a softball dad. I'm looking forward to that endeavor. I'm looking forward to going to Caldwell and I'm looking forward to being a husband. You know, and I got to find a hobby. I don't have hobbies. You know, there's nothing I do. I try to play a little golf. I haven't played golf much in like 6 or 7 years. I don't fish. I don't have any hobbies. You know, my hobbies were watching film. My hobbies were writing in my yellow notepad, trying to come up with new ideas and new things. I don't have. My wife said she was going to write a book for me a long time ago. Maybe we work on the book.
Yeah,
you know, it was
it's a great idea.
Yeah,
people would read that. For sure.
Yeah, and my wife's brilliant. She's a great writer, and she's talked about doing it. You know, high school football coach, the cheers and the tears.
I love that. Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah, and then she's also going to write a book called "I Married a Moron." And just another chapter. So maybe we go down that road a little bit. You know, I don't know.
That'll be the sequel.
That'll be the sequel. Yeah, but I was looking forward to this next endeavor, and I'll find something.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, we're
excited to see
for
it.
you. Yeah, I mean, you've put in the blood, sweat, and tears for so many years. You deserve to now put that energy into mainly your family and doing something that makes you fully fulfilled and content. And I'm sure you'll find that hobby sooner than later. I mean, it's only been a little bit of time. I'm sure that hobby will fall into place.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. Also, I mean, you mentioned it's Saturdays on my retirement party. My wife's done a great job trying to put this thing together, but she doesn't have everybody's phone number. She doesn't have everybody's address. So if you are listening to this podcast and you're interested, please reach out to my wife or reach out to me. And I'd love to see everybody, you know, and it's fun.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking the time. And I just personally want to thank you as well for everything that you have done for the community, strengthening our citizens. I mean, like you were mentioning, it's like that one guy you met at Starbucks, not just the players you directly coached, but the people who were affected by everything else as well. Like saying, you don't know how much that actually means to all that. So, you know, from one Oakdale citizen to another, I thank you and I appreciate everything that you have done. It means a lot, and it's special what you've done. And I hope you truly realize that and see that and accept that it really is a special legacy that you have created in this town, and the people that you affected is very impressive, Coach. So,
well, I appreciate that. You know, it's a blessing. It's an opportunity. You know, it provided me this opportunity provided me a career, and it provided me a career that my kids can look up to, and my wife could look up to, and it gave me an opportunity to, you know, pay it forward because so many people have impacted my life in that same way. You know, and that's what this world needs right now, right? I mean, this world is just a mess right now, you know, and we need more people paying it forward, you know.
More people living with an intention.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say growing up during your coaching era, you in the football program were like the spearhead of that energy that then trickled down into the youth programs, and everyone was, you know, you really did drive a whole multiple generations to where they ended up as athletes or in their careers, because that, you know, mindset, that grit and everything that came with the program, it did trickle down into the youth. I just want to say thank you, because that definitely inspired me as a young athlete, and I know it inspired a lot of our friends too.
Well, I appreciate that. No, that's you know, like I've mentioned a bunch, it's never been about the wins and the losses, but there are wins and losses out there that really matter to coaches and guys that are wired like me, and I know our coaching staff. You know, when we see kids that aren't kids anymore, you know, they're 40 years old, we've been coaching that long, as successful fathers, you know, as husbands and pillars of this community and the next generation of, you know, influencers, you know, those are the wins. You know, when I see people that aren't doing well, you know, that have addiction issues, we've lost some great people that we've coached. Those are the losses. Those are the wins and losses that really matter to me now, and to a lot of people that really understand the big picture of what it is we do. Right. There are wins and losses, but it's not on a scoreboard. You know, it's in life, and I love running into ex-athletes and finding out, you know, what it's like being a dad, you know, and what are they doing? It's amazing how many firemen come out of our program. Lifesavers, true lifesavers that run into buildings that people run out of. It's amazing how many football players at Oakdale are now firemen. And it's beautiful to see. Those are the wins. Those are the wins.
I also got to thank you too. I've never really verbalized this, but looking back on when we first started our career doing what we're doing now in media, back in the day, 2016, OKG. That's pretty much when it started. And you were kind of the first person who really gave us a chance. I remember we reached out to you. Hey, we're just getting into filmmaking. We want to just kind of see what we can do here, create like a documentary, just kind of test the waters with our skills. And you were really the first person who was like, go for it. Let's see what we can do. We talked about it. And that really gave us the confidence to keep doing what we were doing. And that from there, I mean, you're really the one that gave us that chance, that gave us the confidence that propelled us into what we are currently doing now. So again, for that, thank you, because I mean,
no, I thought you guys were nuts. I didn't know what you were talking about, but I didn't know what it was going to be.
We didn't even know we were.
But I truly appreciate your guys' DNA and where you came from. I've known your dad since we were young, and I know who you are, and I knew whatever you guys touch, it's gonna be passionate. It's gonna come from a good place, and you can do everything you can to make us look good.
Sure.
And and you guys are amazing. It's amazing what you guys have done with your careers. I'm so proud, and I'm so happy that one of your first projects was that OKG project. And it is truly amazing to see how many people have looked at that thing and they watched that thing. And it's crazy. People will do scouting reports on us predicated on that OKG thing, and they'll talk to their kids about these guys ain't normal, predicated on that. But you look at how many views that thing's gotten, and it's still getting views. People still watch that thing, and it's funny because now some of the people in that video, they're coaching for me.
Right. Isn't that cool?
And it's the coolest thing. Watching Zach Thomas talk on that video. And Zach's now Coach Thomas. And just a great man that we need to get hired in our district here pretty quick, because he's another major life influencer that's going to be tremendous. He and his brother and the people you guys talked about. And it's just fun to see that video and see that, hey, look at those guys. Now they're, I'll show it sometimes in my classroom when we have a free 10 minutes and they're like, is that Mr. So-and-so? Is that Mr. So? I'm like, no, that is. That's what they look like in high school. That's exactly what they look like in high school. That's right. So it was pretty cool. And you guys did a great job.
I love that.
It was great for us.
We enjoyed doing it. I mean, look back on our projects, and that one's still, even though it was older and we've improved a lot, it's like that was still like top 2 or 3 projects that I take the most pride in, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Party. Just kidding.